Welcome to Your Family's Health, the program that focuses on healthcare issues with unique and different modalities for taking charge of your health today. Experts talk weekly with our continuing roster of guests from around the country and right here in Nassau County to keep you up to date on the latest health issues and trends. Take care of your mind, body, and soul. Spend the next half hour with the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC, and get on the journey to better health.
Hello and welcome to Your Family's Health. My name is Dr. Jeanine Cook-Garard from the nursing department here at Nassau Community College, along with Nassau Community College student Gina Peter. And today we're going to learn about the importance of becoming a bone marrow donor from someone whose life was saved by someone who did just that.
Right now, let's meet Tara Notrica, two-time bone marrow transplant survivor and co-writer of a documentary about her experience.
Also joining us today is Brian Gerlach, the director and editor of that documentary, which is called Second Chance, along with Dr. Ron Jacobs, the account manager with member engagement, enrollment, and experience at the Match Registry, where people can be listed as a potential blood stem cell donor. Tara, Brian, and Dr. Jacobs, welcome to Your Family's Health on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. Welcome, everyone.
Thank you so much for having us today.
What is the name of the disease you're battling, and for how long have you been battling this disease?
I have been battling mast cell disease, particularly mast cell activation syndrome, which is a rare disease, and I have been battling it since my early 20s, so I'm going to say probably back to around 1989.
What were the symptoms of mast cell disease?
In my particular case, what was happening is I was having a lot of anaphylactic type of reactions. So these would come from very different triggers, including different foods, chemicals, odors, perfumes, environmental allergens. So what would happen with me is I would come into contact with something that my body just did not like in the most simple terms. And I would develop facial swelling, hives all over my body. I would have gastro symptoms, constriction of airways. These symptoms would require ER visits and different medications to combat the anaphylaxis.
So I said earlier that you had 2 transplants. Can you tell us about those experiences, and was one different than the other?
Yes, actually back in 2015, I had my first transplant, which was an autologous transplant, whereby I utilized my own stem cells. And for my particular disease, it worked for a very brief time, and then I regressed again. So after a lot of long conversations and a lot of hurdles with insurance, we decided to proceed with a second transplant, which was an allogeneic transplant. And for that transplant, I actually had an unrelated anonymous donor who was a match for me. As far as my second transplant, I just want to mention that my sister was tested to possibly be a match for me, but unfortunately she was not. So we did have to turn to the registry from Be the Match to find somebody who would be a donor for me.
What would you say is the most difficult part of the transplant process?
With transplantation, you have to spend a tremendous amount of time in isolation. Both of my transplants were done at Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center in New York City by Dr. Gerlach. A huge shout out to my doctor, who I just love dearly. So as I mentioned, you're in a private room for a very long time, very limited visitation. So I did have to spend a lot of time by myself. Sloan has a tremendous amount of services that are for inpatient patients, and they come into your room. Some of the things included music therapy, physical therapy, recreational therapy. They had counseling services. They had religious officials coming in, so they did keep you kind of busy. But again, it's a long time to spend by yourself. So I would say that was one of the most challenging things for me, especially during my allogeneic transplant, which was my second transplant. I developed a tremendous amount of complications, and I spent a good part of 2018 and 2019 as an inpatient being treated.
What is receiving a transplant like? Can you take us basically through the process in the procedure itself?
I'll keep it in the most simple terms I know. And again, I'll just relate it to my case. So in my particular case, and I will speak about my allogeneic transplant, which required the donor, I was admitted and I spent 9 days receiving a tremendous amount of chemotherapy agents to wipe out my current immune system. So I would be able to prepare my body for the new immune system that I was going to get through my donor. So it was 9 days of 3 different intensive chemotherapy agents. Day 10, I was able to rest. And then after that, I was infused with my new cells. I think I was given about 10 million cells, which is kind of like, I'm going to say like a blood transfusion. So it's not as though you go into an OR to have a bone marrow transplant. It's done at bedside, and it looks like an IV bag that contains all of these healthy cells that are going to be infused into your body through, in my case, I had a central line that was inserted into my chest. So the cells went in through that line. And then I spent about 60 days after receiving the cells inpatient and also at a step-down facility, which was located very close to the main campus of Sloan, whereby I would have to do daily visits to check all of my numbers to make sure that my red blood cell counts were okay and my white blood count cells were okay, and, you know, a whole host of other things that they monitor. And I was admitted on June 15th, and I came home for the first time in mid-August.
What made you decide to share your story?
After going through what I did and being a patient for so long, and, you know, being exposed to what goes on in the unit and meeting different patients and family members, I just felt it was so necessary on so many different levels to continue to raise awareness about rare diseases, to continue to educate about the bone marrow transplant process, to encourage more people to become life-saving donors, and to just hopefully provide a sense of hope and inspiration and courage to others that may be going through challenging processes as well.
So you're sharing your story quite publicly now, and now through a documentary. So let's talk to Brian now. Brian, how did you get involved with this project?
I was approached by the other director and other editor, Matthew White. He is also a producer on the film. He approached me because I had worked with him in the past on a different documentary that he made. And we kind of just sat down and talked about Tara's story and kind of figured out that that's something that a lot of people can relate to, and it's something that we feel like should be told to the world. And so we went down to Long Island and shot it in a few weeks, and we worked on it for about a year and a half after that.
What was it like filming the intense moments, such as Tara going to the hospital for her final check-in and being there for the procedure?
It was really humbling and challenging because I was actually the only one that went down there to film that. You really just want to be as respectful and truthful as possible to what's happening with this family's life, because at the end of the day, they're going through something major, and I'm sitting there sticking a camera in their face, trying to capture it all. And you just really want to be respectful to the process, and you really want to be able to show the audience what it really is like when in these intense moments. But really, the entire thing, it was kind of like an honor to be there.
So what do you hope to achieve with this film and documentary?
We really want to just get this kind of story out to the world. We think really now more than ever that families can relate to having health struggles. Now that COVID has kind of taken over the world, I think people are a little bit more receptive and empathetic towards people having to deal with issues with their health and with their bodies that they can't control. And one of the things that was, I know, difficult for Tara was having to be basically in quarantine away from her family for a long time. And that's something that now people see how challenging that really is. And we really want to just show this story to the world.
You're listening to Your Family's Health on the Voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. My name is Dr. Jeanine Cook-Garard, along with a Nassau Community College student, Gina Peter. And today we're learning all about the importance of becoming a bone marrow donor. Our guests are Tara Notrica, two-time bone marrow transplant survivor, and co-writer of a documentary about her experience, Brian Gerlach. The director and editor of that documentary, which is called Second Chance, along with Dr. Ron Jacob, the account manager with member engagement, enrollment, and experience at the Match Registry. So just to the next question, where has this documentary, how can we see it? And, what are some of the awards that you've won based upon this so provocative documentary that you have done?
So right now we're in the middle of sending it to a lot of film festivals across the United States and worldwide. And so it isn't on a streaming platform just yet, but that's what we're kind of working on behind the scenes. And so we've won, Tara has won a bunch of music awards. The film has won film awards all across the entire world right now in smaller circuits. And we're really just hoping to pop off in a bigger film festival in a bigger market so people can see it on a mainstream platform.
Let's turn our attention to how people can help someone like Tara and talk to Dr. Jacobs. What does Be the Match Registry do?
Be the Match is the National Blood Stem Cell Bone Marrow Registry. So we house information of volunteers who've signed up and said that, hey, if I ever come up as a match for a patient who has a blood cancer or blood disorder, and I have the opportunity to save their lives by donating my blood stem cells, I'm willing to do so. And so when they register, they're signing up for any patient that they possibly match, and they're signing up knowing that they would be asked to donate their blood stem cells.
And how does a person register to be a part of this match?
So the registration is really simple. Everything is done digitally right now for registration. So they can do it on their phone, they could do it on their tablet or their laptop computer. For anyone who's interested, who wants to register after listening to this show, they can register by texting the word NCC21. So that's NCC21. And if you text that to the number 61474, they'll receive a link, and you just click on that link and you fill that out, and they can request that a swab kit be mailed to their home. Once the swab kit is mailed, they just simply swab the inside of their cheek. It takes 20 seconds. And then they put it right back in the mailbox. Postage is already paid for. And our biggest request is that you remember to send it back, because 50% of the people forget to send it back. And then the second thing is remain committed, because our biggest issue is that too many people register and then are not committed to the process.
If you register and then you are a match, what does the donation process look like?
Sure. So there are two ways that we can actually collect the blood stem cells. They exist in two different places in your body. I always address the first one as the marrow donation, because that's the one everybody's scared of. That's the procedure that a lot of people will have misconceptions about. So the marrow donation, every large bone in your body has marrow within the central portion of it. It's just a spongy material. we're not obtaining marrow, but what we're doing is we are obtaining the blood stem cells that exist within that marrow. And the location we obtain those cells from is the back of your hip bone. So if you were to hold your hips, where your thumbs rest, that's where we obtain the cells from. Now, this process is done under anesthesia. 96% of the time, it's under general anesthesia. Only 4% do use regional. And that's because in case the donor had prior issues with general anesthesia, then only do we go to regional. But you're always under anesthesia. So some of the myths and misconceptions is that it's really painful. Well, it's not, because you're under anesthesia. Oh, they go to your spinal cord, or they're going to go near your vertebrae. We don't. We go to the back of your hip bone. That's the location. The most common complaint with this procedure is when the anesthesia wears off, you're sore for a few days. Typically, the soreness lasts from 2 to 7 days, and they'll give you pain meds as needed to resolve and relieve the soreness. Now, this procedure is only done 20% of the time now. 80% of the time, we actually obtain those same blood stem cells from your bloodstream. So what we do is we give you a medication called filgrastim. That medication causes your body to develop more of these blood stem cells and bring them into your bloodstream. You take that med for 5 days, and then on the 5th day, you go to a transplant center or a hospital that's local, and then we draw your blood from one arm that goes into a machine, and that machine collects just those blood stem cells that were created for the donation. Then the remaining blood is sent back into your other arm, so there's no blood loss in the process. In this procedure, the most common complaint or side effect is when you're on the meds to increase the blood stem cell count in your bloodstream, you might feel sore, kind of soreness, body aches, muscle aches, bone aches. So we give you, believe it or not, Tylenol to relieve that. So when you hear that, you understand it's really not that severe of any soreness. This procedure now is done 80% of the time. If anyone's ever donated platelets, it's just like that. Platelet donation takes about 2 to 3 hours. Blood stem cell donation takes about 5 to 6 hours.
So is it true that it's difficult for ethnically diverse patients to find a match?
Extremely difficult, extremely. So if you were to look at the registry, just general numbers, if you are Hispanic, your odds of finding a match in the registry is 46%. If you're Asian, 41%. And if you're African American, 23%. If you're multiracial, it's less than that. And so when I say a match, I mean someone who is a ideal match in the registry who is committed and available for the donation process. And if you compare that with a Western European Caucasian, that percentage is 80%. So there is a wide gap between ethnically diverse and Caucasian patient needs.
Is this strictly because of the donors who are giving their stem cell, or is it because of those that need it? Is it, which side are we looking at?
Sure. There definitely is an issue with numbers. You know, the registry does not have the necessary numbers of ethnically diverse donors. And so that's one thing we have to address. The other issue is that we see that when ethnically diverse donors come up as a match, registry members come up as a match, they are more likely to say no or say that they're not interested. And we've realized the reason for that is the education at the front end when we're registering them was not necessarily there. We did not do a good enough job to address the cultural implications. We did not do a good enough job to contextualize the transplant for each ethnically diverse group. So that's something that we're doing a much better job of. We're being trained by individuals who understand the disparities and inequities that exist in healthcare. Harriet Washington is an individual who wrote a book, The Medical Apartheid. She has addressed many of us at different seminars at Be the Match. So we're learning about the historical mistrust that exists within the healthcare system as well. So there's multiple layers to it. But I think at the end of the day, it's all about ensuring that the education is there and ensuring that ethnically diverse communities understand the need for more donors, the need for more committed donors, and the understanding that for these numbers to improve, we need our communities to step up and to be willing to save the lives of those patients.
Is stem cell donation, is this something that you will most likely match with your same race?
Yes, Gina. So very, very good question. And that is true. What we're matching is an antigen. It's a protein that it's in our bodies called HLA. If we're looking for an ideal 10 out of 10 match, we have to understand that if we have 10 of these HLA antigens, 5 came from our mother and 5 came from our father. And that's our unique HLA typing. And as Tara mentioned, she didn't match her sister. That's because her sister got a different set of 5 from maybe her mom and a different set of 5 from her dad. And that's why Tara and her sister did not match. That HLA typing and HLA tends to be the same within racial and ethnic groups as well. I'm actually a donor. I donated my blood stem cells to a patient with lymphoma back in 2014. And just like Tara, I remember thinking my brother did not match this patient. And so that told me, wow, I'm a better match with this recipient somewhere in the world than I am my own brother. And that was really shocking to me at the time.
So who pays for the bone marrow transplant?
Not the donor. All the expenses are covered by Be the Match or the insurance company. So I always tell people, if you need a car ride to get your initial blood work done, we'll send car service for you. If you need someone to watch your children, we'll provide a babysitter, a dog walker. If you have a boss who's a jerk who won't give you the paid time off, we will cover up to $50 an hour to reimburse you for any funds that you lost. We try to attempt to do everything locally, but we have a brand new center in Seattle, which is a collection center, which is like a resort. So we always tell people, hey, if you want to take a trip, we'll fly you and a companion out there, all expenses paid for. So meals, the hotel room, and everything's going to be covered. So we have a lot of people who actually opt in for that as well. So, but there is zero expense for the donor at all.
So this question is for you, Tara. How long of a downtime was it after the bone marrow transplant? Were you able to resume your normal activities right away, or, was it weeks before you resumed?
It was not right away. As I mentioned earlier, I had a tremendous amount of complications. So I actually developed graft versus host disease, in which I started to reject my donor cells. So that required treatment. I had a reactivation of Epstein-Barr virus, which actually required 6 months of chemotherapy treatments. I had 2 bouts of pneumonia, which required hospitalizations, and I developed a condition called hemolytic anemia, in which I started attacking my red blood cells. So I spent a great deal of time hospitalized, inpatient, in isolation, from October 2018 through about June 2019. I currently still consider myself to be recuperating. I'm on monthly treatments to prevent pneumonia, and I'm also on daily medications for the graft versus host disease. And I also have to take immunosuppressive medications to kind of try to keep different autoimmune conditions from cropping up, as well as other medications that I have to take as well. So very, very long recuperation process.
Dr. Jacobs, is this typical?
I wouldn't say it's typical. I think each patient, each recipient, they have a unique recovery period in time. And it's also dependent on the diagnosis. You see that certain lymphomas and leukemias versus other blood disorders, the recovery time varies. I think one of the things we noticed is at the end of it all, and maybe Tara can vouch for this, what we're literally trying to do is we're trying to steal time. We are literally trying to steal time for Tara, not just for Tara, but Tara's family. Right. And that's the opportunity this provides. Individuals who are told and said that their time is up or even limited, we're literally saying, no, it's not. And we're going to give this person more time. And that's what we are providing.
if I were to donate, how long will I be out of work?
Sure. So if you were to go through the peripheral blood stem cell donation, the PBSC, which is done 80% of the time, I'll tell you my timeline, which is pretty standard as well. I received my first set of meds on a Friday. And then so Friday, I took my first set of meds, and then that's when it started. So I was at work Friday. Saturday and Sunday, I was at home. Monday, I went into work for a half day, and Tuesday was my actual donation. So I took Tuesday off. I donated on Tuesday. Like I said, it took about 5 to 6 hours. Wednesday, I had the day off just to recover. And then Thursday, I was back at work. So technically, I would say 1 day for donation, 1 day, a day and a half just to kind of recover. And that was it for me. And I always tell people, my donation was a Tuesday, and on Friday I was flying to Dallas for a meeting. So it's been 7 years, everything is fine. Now, if you did marrow, like I mentioned, the soreness typically lasts for 2 to 7 days. We've seen many people still go to work because they'll have pain meds to address the soreness. So it can be anywhere from 24 to 48 hours, maybe 72 hours, again, depending on the individual, but it is not, you wouldn't be out of work for a substantial amount of time.
Dr. Jacobs, just give us your website so people can contact you.
Sure. So the general website is bethematch.org. bethematch.org. You could go there and you could reach out to anyone. We have account managers and community engagement reps all throughout the country. As you mentioned, I'm the account manager for the Northeast. So I cover from Maine to Pennsylvania to here in New York and everything in between. I live here in Long Island. I grew up here in Long Island as well. And Nassau Community College is actually one of my accounts. I have a community engagement rep who is from the New York Blood Center who actually supports Nassau Community College, and we work together at that school. And that's why we have that custom code, the NCC21. Again, text NCC21 to 61474 to register, and we can actually provide you with data and let you know how many people have registered and eventually how many people have gone to donate and save a life using that code as well.
Well, thank you for being here, Tara Notrica and Brian Gerlach. And Dr. Ron Jacobs, we hope you stay safe and continue to do the great work that you're doing. And thank you for being our guest today. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
This is Dr. Jeanine Cook-Garard from the nursing department here at Nassau Community College, along with student Gina Peter. And we want to thank you for listening to this week's edition of Your Family's Health.
We'd like to get your feedback on your family's health. Send your comments by emailing them to whpc@ncc.edu. Podcasts of today's show are available on iTunes, Android Podcasts, and Spreaker. This program was produced at the studios of Nassau Community College in cooperation with the nursing department. Join us next week for another edition of Your Family's Health on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC.